So the public is warned not to eat the rock lobster and fish that are washing up on the Western Cape as they pose a health risk. The Department of Forestry, Fisheries and the Environment this week issued a situation red alert, placing all government role players in the sector on standby to handle the harmful algal bloom, also known as red tide, that has been developing on the West Coast. This caused an estimated 500 tons of West Coast rock lobster to leave the ocean since the 1st of March, and authorities say the risk of further mortalities is high in the coming days. We're joined now by Dr. Grant Pitcher. He's a scientist at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. Dr. Pitcher, thank you for availing yourself this afternoon. As we understand that some 750,000 lobsters have come ashore. Where are we with the cleanup efforts? How are they progressing?
Yeah, well, at the moment, the immediate risk of more low oxygen water, which has been the cause of the mortality, has disappeared because we've had some southeasterly winds. So they've blown the bloom, the red tide, offshore. And so the immediate risk of more mortalities is not, there's little risk at the moment. But the beaches are still needing a lot of cleaning up, and this is underway still and will continue over the weekend and on Monday. But in the interim, the idea, of course, for the department was to do as much, trying to save as much of the resources they could. And so they collected all the live rock lobster and crated them and then transported them by truck up to Lambert's Bay, where the rock lobster industry then took them out and really relocated them into oxygenated water.
Tell us more about red tides. It's a natural phenomenon caused by?
No, it's caused by the plants, plankton, little microscopic plants in the water. And of course our West Coast is a very productive system. That's why we have a big fisheries on the West Coast. And so we tend to have a very high biomass. And when this high biomass accumulates onshore, when winds tend to abate, and we have very calm conditions, we have very high concentrations of these plankton moving into the inshore shallow waters, where they tend to run out of nutrients, and the bloom then simply decays. And that, of course, causes oxygen consumption, and all the oxygen is sucked out of the water column, and that's why these rock lobster died. We measured oxygen concentrations in Elands Bay on the Tuesday and Wednesday, and they were virtually zero, which means we had real anoxic conditions, where no animals can really survive in anoxic conditions.
The Worldwide Fund for Nature a few years ago sounded the alarm that the lobster could disappear altogether unless some radical action was taken by the South African government. With relation to the latest developments, how much of a problem does this pose?
Yeah, this is, has a massive impact. I mean, 500 tons is about the same order as the total allowable catch for annual catch, so it's massive, and it'll no doubt have an impact. What's quite difficult to do is predict the recovery of the resource. I remember in the I think it was the late 90s, we had an even bigger mortality like this, and we were actually surprised by the speed at which the recovery took place. But of course the recovery depends on how much lobster are in the water at present, and of course that tends to be declining all the time. So we'll have to see how quickly it will recover, but I'm sure there will be a big impact.
Nature being nature, it's kind of difficult to predict anything, but just in terms of you saying it's difficult to predict the recovery, is it possible to predict the red tide?
Yeah, well, we're able to monitor the red tide by satellites, actually. We use satellites to look at the ocean color, which tells us where the red tides are. So it gives us a very good indication of the seasonal build-up of red tides. And then we can use weather predictions to simply indicate when these events of low anoxia are. That's when these blooms really move inshore. So there is some predictability about the events. But of course, and we were, I think, fairly well prepared for this event. But yeah, you're at the hands of the weather in the end. So if the winds come up, it tends to drive these blooms offshore and the threat disappears. But if the good weather persists, then the risk of low oxygen increases.
Why are you giving a warning for people not to consume any of the lobsters or the fish?
Well, simply, there's a misconception that it's owing to toxins, but there are presently no toxins in the water. It's simply that these rock lobsters are in various forms of decay, essentially, so they're just not fit for human consumption. And of course, the ones that are still alive, the intention is to rescue them and relocate them to oxygenated waters.
Dr. Grant Pitcher is a specialist scientist at the Department of Forestry, Fisheries and Environment. Thank you for availing yourself.